how does someone move all the way from Zimbabwe to go to the US? Where does that story start?
I was born and raised in Harare for majority of my life. I used to move around a lot. My family used to move around a lot. As a child, I don't think it is fun because every time that you move, you leave behind your friends, right? And you have to build new relations. However, I appreciate the experience now because it built within me the ability to easily adapt, the ability to relate to different people without a lot of hassle. Unfortunately, the problems of 2008 kept on following us. I had to, me and my friends had to teach ourselves our A-levels for all the 2 years. And we continued anyway, right? And we were able to complete. I would argue that failure is guaranteed. So don't be afraid to fail and don't be afraid to be small.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Conversations with the Dreamers. I'm your host, Petronella Mnenja, and as always, I am so excited to be the one who platforms these stories. We platform the stories of phenomenal men and women who are moving and shaking things in their personal lives, in their community, and in the world. On this platform, we spotlight the dreamers that otherwise would not be known about because they choose to live their lives outside of the public sphere. They may not have written books, they may not have done a lot of things in public, but their lives are so phenomenal, and we give them a chance to share their stories so you and I can be inspired, motivated, and inspired. And today our guest comes all the way from West Virginia University in US. Y'all, I can't even talk about the things that she does. So she's a phenomenal academic all the way from Zimbabwe to the USA, and he's going to tell us about all the work that he does. Before I butcher his CV, his name is Mr. Tadini, the one and only. Tadini, welcome to Conversations with the Dreamers.
Oh, thank you very much for having me here. I think this is an awesome platform and an awesome opportunity. Thank you very much for having me back, Petronella.
Awesome. Thank you, Tadini. We are so excited to have you. So before we go anywhere, I tried introducing you. I'm like, I couldn't even pronounce where you work. I'm like, Viatris, I might even get it wrong. So before we go anywhere, tell us, who is Mr. Tadini? What does he do? Who is he today? Before we talk about where he came from and all that, who are you today, sir, and what do you do?
I always find that to be a very difficult question when people ask you to say, who are you? But I'm going to try and do my best. All right. So Tadini Wenyika Masaya is the name. I am a father. I am a husband. I am a believer. Some would call me a Christian. I hope I will live up to that title. At some point, I will be happy to live up to that title. I am a research and development scientist. Yes, the name is Viatris. I'm a research and development scientist at a pharmaceutical company, an international pharmaceutical company. Yes, outside of that, I am also a very active citizen, involved in a lot of leadership organizations and institutions, and upcoming entrepreneur. Although I've been gagged strongly on the entrepreneur side, I might not speak as much on that. Partners have gagged me on that. But yeah, in short, I would say that's who I am.
How does someone, just out of curiosity, how does someone manage to work for an international pharmaceutical company? How did you get there?
Well, I think, if it is international and if it is as large as the company that I work for, there are a lot of opportunities for people in different fields. So in particular for the field that I am in, which is chemistry and analytical chemistry, I think it's more of, for me, it was very intentional. It comes from some things that I will touch in the background. It's understanding the industry and knowing beforehand that you want to be in that industry, aligning the studies that you're going to engage in, the experience that you're going to gain along the road, targeted towards that industry and knowing what it is that you want to do in the pharma industry.
Okay, thank you for that, Tadini. Y'all don't say I didn't ask. I asked and you got the inside scoop. So, Mr. Tadini, let's talk about where this story started. How does someone move all the way from Zimbabwe to go to the US? Where does that story start? Where were you born? What was your childhood like?
Childhood. Okay. I haven't spoken about that in a very long time. But I was born and raised in Harare for majority of my life. I grew up in Melbourne. Yes, I grew up in Melbourne. I did my primary school, at least attended my first 3 years of primary school at Avonlea Primary School. Then from there, I moved to Groombridge, did the remainder of the years at Groombridge. I used to move around a lot. My family used to move around a lot. But in terms of education, those were the two schools that I attended in my formative years. Then where did I grow up exactly? Like I say, I was all over in Harare. My father used to move the family a lot from one place to another. Yeah. Hopefully I'll be able to expand on that as well.
Yeah, I'm curious. Which sort of areas did you move to? I moved a lot as a kid as well, so I'm always quite intrigued to hear people's stories of how they were moving around. So which areas did you move around to?
So Melbourne was where we started. Attended my preschool there. I think it used to be called Elephant Preschool or something like that. Yeah, interesting place to be. I have very fond memories of the place. Then from there, I moved to Avonlea. That's why my first primary school was actually Avonlea Primary School. I stayed in Avonlea for a couple of years. From Avonlea, we moved to Strathaven. We used to live opposite Morgan Tsvangirai when he was starting in his formative, also in his political career. Yeah, then I moved to Borodale. From there, I moved to Mandara. Then from Mandara, I moved to Heathcliff. From Heathcliff, I moved to Kwadzana. I've been in all the neighborhoods.
I'm quite curious because these are very different neighborhoods. I didn't grow up in Harare. I grew up in Goku, but then I think my family's been living in Harare the past few years. And these are quite different areas. So I'm thinking, how did you adapt? How are you moving from one end of the town to another end of the town? How are you adapting? And did you find it easy to just adapt to the different areas?
As a child, I don't think it is fun because every time that you move, you leave behind your friends, right? And you have to build new relations. And I'm sure you've been to primary school and high school. It's not easy to become part of a friend group or fully accepted within a friend group. Kids at times can be mean, especially to the newcomers. So there was always that hassle. And maybe that is why when it came to primary school, my parents tried to, no matter where we had moved to, at least I maintain the school, even if it means that I have to travel to that school from wherever we're living at that point. But it's always difficult because even in the neighborhood, you also make friends and those relationships are cut off and you feel sad about it whenever you move. So when I was young, I was quite upset about it, never really excited about moving. And maybe that's why I don't like moving a lot as an adult. However, I appreciate the experience now because it built within me the ability to easily adapt, the ability to relate to different people without a lot of hassle. It's something that a skill that I had to hone as a survival mechanism.
You really learn how to adapt to new places easily, how to make friends easily because you're already always moving. So I think that's a good way of looking into it, just putting it into perspective. I give you the skills. So I'm curious, you talked about when you're talking about what you do now, how you have had to be intentional and with the decisions that you've made. When you were growing up, did you know who you wanted to be? Who did you want to be when you grew up? Like, this is when I grow up, I want to be this. Who did you want to be and what inspired that person?
Well, when I was growing up, I was surrounded by artists and a lot of art. My parents were artists, the extended family, the majority of them were artists. I would be hard pressed to find a relative that was not in some way in the arts sector. So why did I want to be at that point, I wanted to be an artist. The guys looked cool. They were cool and they're still cool now. They had the most amazing hairstyles. They had dreadlocks, although at that point there was still a stigma around those kinds of hairstyles. They had beads in them. Even the shirts that they wore, because it was in line with industry. Then the work, I was always around my father working, so in his painting studio or outside, or he's working on stone. That's what I wanted to do, right? But I also had a deep desire to understand my environment. So at that point, I was already engaging in just understanding the natural sciences, and my parents also supported it in opening up the access to that by giving me, the different books, even if they were beyond the age that I was at. I think my first drawing of the human heart with all the detailed human heart, and not that love sign that we make. I think I was grade 3. I was grade 3 because I had the books to that. That is that. So Wallace, I did not want to, or I was not conscious that I was going to pursue science. I did have a part of me that found it very fascinating. Equally as fascinating is what I actually wanted to be, a scientist, an artist, you see. So I would say it was not what I am now, right? If I had gotten my way, I would be out there in a workshop, selling sculptures, making paintings, something of that sort.
Can you not do both, though? I think you can be adventurous and be both.
I have tried, but maybe I'll have to come back. Yeah, I do have my own PCs and my own they're still a private collection. Maybe when I do have the guts and the confidence, I might try and put them out there. But what I've realized also is certain skills, I improved because of the people that are around you. At that time, I was very good at it, whether it is painting or sculpture, because my environment also promoted it. And the people, I had the people to depend on in terms of developing that skill. But as I continued to pursue education, then move on with other chapters of my life, the sphere around me changed, right? The sphere around me changed. Yeah, but I used to be so invested in it to a point whereby I think I remember it was grade 5. There was a competition by Colgate where they were saying you can draw an airplane. And if you draw an airplane, then you put the Colgate logo, you would win so much. It was across all primary schools. I did a very beautiful drawing. I think my teachers at the time did not believe that I'm the one that did the drawing, right? So what they then did was, you know what? You are going to have to draw another one, but you will do it in class. Obviously, we're watching.
Oh no, the pressure. The pressure.
Yeah, but that's a long-winded way of saying no. I didn't envision myself in the sciences, rather in the art industry.
So when did the transition happen? I know we are following the journey. You're talking about primary school. So now you're in high school. Tell us a little bit more about high school. You were interested in drawing human hearts, but at the same time, you're interested in art and all that. And high school is this way of defining you. It's whether or not you want to, they define you, don't they? Like Form 3, they sort of put you in clusters where you sort of get on the path that you might walk for the rest of your life. So how was high school for you and finding yourself and deciding the path that you wanted to walk?
All right. So when I went to high school, I still wasn't fully aware. Like Form 1, walking in, I wasn't aware, like, what do I want to do? I know that my parents expect to get good grades, and good grades are good for me as well. And they were not that strict on education, in the sense that, you have to come here with these particular kind of performances. And if you don't, we are going to make sure that you see fire. No, they were not like that. So maybe that's why I got to that stage with the reluctance in terms of what is it that I really want to do. I got there with still the same idea. Art is perfect. It was even encouraged from the earlier ages, because whenever one of my parents or extended family showed up, people were like, high school, and I was at a boys' high. Guys appreciate that. So for some years it was reinforced, and I think this is a fascinating industry to go into. But there was a competition with a boys' high. Everything is very highly competitive, right? However, what happened the first semester, or the first term of my Form 1, I was very late to join the school. So because of that, I could write the entrance exams. I think I was just accepted because my parents went on their knees and begged begged as much as they could to the then headmaster. Mr. Maudze, I always remember him fondly. So he gave me a place, but he said I would be in the last class. I think you understand how Zimbabwe, we have first class, last class. I don't agree with the system, but that's what's there. Mm-hmm. And they said I would be in the last class. So they put me in the very last class. And in the last class, they say, if you can perform, you'll be changed and you'll be put into a better class. And there was the stigma around being in the last class, right? So I had to also concentrate on my academic work now, simply for me to change my class, not because I had a real drive, as in I want to, it was simply for me to change my status at the school. And we were surrounded by 2 girls' schools. So I didn't want to be the boy who's known to be in the last class whenever we go out there for sports. Right. So because of that, I started to work very hard on my academic work. The second term of that year, I did so well that I was the top student of all the Form 1 students, but I was in the last class, right? And so I was in the last class, but outperformed everyone, including the guys that went. And my class teacher at that time, I will always remember him fondly also, was the one who taught us woodwork. But he then said, you know what, you should change this guys into the next class. The performance was so good, they didn't believe it. They said, if he's that good, he should do it again a third time in the third semester, in the third term, right? So unfortunately, I had to stay, but I had stirred up so much attention from the other students, especially the ones in the first class. Like, how can the guy be performing this way when we don't expect that? And that started a competition that went on for 4 years, right? I eventually was changed into that other class. But because of that, there was so much competition to just outdo each other in terms of our academic work, to a point whereby we had a scoreboard. We had a scoreboard, right? Where you would constantly, if you're writing exams, you would come and update your mark there. And we would rank each other in terms of where you are. So that motivated me to pursue academia. And I think in Form 4, Form 3, Form 4, we also started to understand careers. How people would start to say, okay, if you're into engineering, this is what will happen. If you're medicine, those kind of careers, that's where it's also instilled in you. And then we also So that's when I said, okay, yeah, maybe I have to make the right choice here. I have to think about what I want to be. Then I reflected on what it is that I was already good at. Sciences shouted out to me. Then I went that way. Then I also had to give up on the arts and sports at that time because unfortunately we were O level around the 2007 and 2008 era. So you had to be realistic about these things. What gives you a better opportunity given the state of the nation at that time? And it was definitely not sports. It was definitely not arts. The arts suffered a lot because of what was happening in terms of our international relations, tourism, and all that. So that's how I cut down to sciences and then continued that into A level. Unfortunately, the problems of 2008 kept on following us. I had to, me and my friends had to teach ourselves our O level. Right, for our A level, sorry, for all the 2 years, right? We didn't have a teacher. We didn't have a teacher. I think, I don't think we even had it. No, we didn't even have a maths teacher and no physics teacher. We had none of that. But those were the subjects we're doing. And we continued anyway, right? And we were able to complete.
Tadini, it's, I think one thing that I'm realizing from your story is a little healthy competition is good for you. I think it started with the Colgate competition and then the grades competition, and is, I think for me also one of the most defining moments in my life came because someone dared me and I just worked so hard to prove a point. So I think it's quite interesting to hear it in your story as well that you had sort of like your journey was punctuated by healthy competition. So to anybody watching us, never be afraid of a little bit of competition as long as it's working for your good and as long as it's improving you, and don't do it for vanity. So thank you, Tadini. So you talked about teaching yourself for A levels. Tell us a little bit more about that. How did that affect you in a way, if it did, and how was your A level and the results and the whole process? How was that like for you?
Well, I think the problem actually started earlier than that. So in 2007, in 2007, most government institutions, A, B, or C, however you'd want to rank them, were suffering from the same problem, which was a shortage of teachers, and teachers being, going to different other greener pastures. So right from 2007, when we were Form 3, at that time, we didn't have as many teachers. I think at some point we were reduced to just the headmaster and a few head of departments that had to, sail the ship no matter what. So we had a skeleton crew. So right in 2007, when I was Form 3, that's when I wrote my O levels in Form 3. And the reason why I wrote my O levels then and my friends is because we knew that we had been told that we're not going to have final year exams. And the reason is because we just don't have the teachers. But it was also very cheap to write the O level exam. So I was like, well, we have been reading. So we started to read back then by ourselves, about the teachers, because of that competition that we had created. So we still continued, even in the absence of actual instructors, right? And so we get to the end of the year in 2007, we realized that with all this work that we have been doing, we're not going to be tested on it, and we won't be able to fill in our scoreboard. Remember, we had a scoreboard to fill out, right? We need a referee to make sure that we can fill out the scoreboard correctly. So we talk to each other to say we should register for the O levels. And they were very cheap. I think it was those crazy numbers, 5 billion. But I remember that writing each subject was equivalent to buying a single pack of Maputi.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was a no-brainer. We want the scoreboard filled. We're going to write the exams. So we wrote the exams, the O-level exams when we were Form 3. The problems continued into 2008, but we had already fostered the culture of just learning by ourselves, even without the instructors. When they can step in, they will step in. But otherwise, life goes on, and we have to make do with what's there. So by the time we got to A level, we were the stream that was told to go to A level without O level results.
O-level results. I remember that. I remember that. Soldier, something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, but for me and my colleagues, we had results from the previous year, right? We didn't have, for those that wrote again in 2000, didn't have results from 2008, right? But we had results. So we continued. When we started off O level for the sciences, I think the class was up to 30 students, right? Because people had been permitted to go out the results. But we still didn't have teachers. Things had not gone back to normal. And at some point, they managed to mark the results, and then they said, okay, now we're going to review results. And people had to be asked to change programs or to go back, step back. And a lot of people gave up then, right? A lot of people gave up then. But we survived, and then we continued, still with no teachers, but the culture of reading, teaching yourself, and an actual desire to want to know. It wasn't just about the qualification that you can obtain, but it was, if Nakabata Bukure physics, do I really know what's happening? Can I use this knowledge and explain it to the other person? But better than that, can I use it to make something? That's the attitude that we had. So we continued. So from 30 students, because there were no teachers also, and because people finally got results and some had to go back, there were only 3 students left who were in the sciences. And we continued, 3 of us like that. Yes, with a back and forth, teaching each other as much as we could, right? I'm happy that all of us have done well, and we've managed to pursue, different careers. I'm a scientist with a focus on in the chemical industry and the pharma industry. The other one is a radiographer. The other one is an environmentalist. But we all are in the sciences. So I'm proud of those guys because of that struggle portion that we shared together. Yeah. And I think the only thing that we had were our books, and a headmaster who was like, you know what? If you're willing to put in the effort that is needed, I'm going to make sure that at least you will be allowed to write the exams, and you will have the necessary material for the final practical exams and stuff like that. So that's the story there.
That's amazing. I think it's an amazing testament to resilience and to hard work, because usually I think it's human nature to come up with the best excuses, So I know many people during that time who just had the perfect excuse, we didn't have teachers, we didn't have. So I think it's an interesting and a powerful testimony of resilience that ought to inspire somebody that, is your life is your responsibility. You know what I mean? Like you could have given up because you didn't have teachers, but that would have just affected you. So if you're watching us, this is your cue to take responsibility of your life. So thank you for sharing that, Tadini.
If I could add something on that, the odds were stacked against us. All the people at that time, the odds were heavily stacked against them. Those that gave up and those of us that continued. So I always remember that I think our continuation, yes, is a sign of resilience. But for my folks that did not continue, the odds were extremely stacked against us. There was a lot to consider. So if I could, I would light a candle every night for someone who gave up and say that I totally understand that in certain situations, it is not as simple as you have to soldier on. And at that time, I really have to say it was an extreme sport. It was an extreme sport. The odds were really stacked against people. I have an understanding for people that gave up. I could have easily been one of those, right? And maybe it was just a simple fluke of God's blessing that permitted me not to give up. Yeah, but I just wanted to put that on record.
No, that's okay. And thank you for that. And I think it's that's the thing. You have an understanding, but sometimes there is a way where you can understand yourself out of the life of your dreams. Do you get it? So it's okay to understand that if I grew up in Gokwe, no electricity, no tarred roads, literally nothing. The only people around me were police officers and nurses and teachers. Do you get it? And I made the decision to want a life that I couldn't even imagine. The people thought I was crazy. So it's we do want to light a candle for everybody. But the reason why we platform stories like you is to that person who's at the verge of giving up, to give them hope that, just hold on one more time, because it's very understandable. And there are moments where if you give up, everyone will understand. But then what happens after that? So we platform these conversations and listen to your stories to give that person who's at the verge of giving up. But you know what? It's going to be your life in 10 years. You are going to be you in the next 20 years. So if you can hold on, if you can fight, people have heard it worse and they kept going. So thank you for that. So tell us now, the three of you wrote your A-levels and you got the results that you got. What was university? Because I know that somewhere along there, university, somehow where you went to the US. So tell us that journey going to university and getting to the PhD in the US.
All right. So university, I went to Bulawayo. I think that was my first time living outside Harare for a very long period, continuously. So I went to the National University of Science and Technology. I was accepted for 2 programs when I applied. I think I wanted to do civil engineering and chemistry, applied chemistry. Those were the 2 programs that I was accepted for. Right. But they were not my first choice. My first choice was actually chemical engineering. That's what I wanted to do at that particular moment in time. But they felt that I should not get that, or I did not, quite qualify for it. Right. So then came the decision: what do I go and do? But because of that influence that I mentioned in Form 3, prestigious programs, the obvious choice was to, go and try and do something very prestigious. There was a negative connotation within the science fraternity, at least in Zimbabwe. There was a negative connotation around the pure natural sciences. So people used to say, if you were to do natural sciences, something like chemistry, biology, the only thing that you could do is to become a teacher. But I didn't want to teach. At that time, I didn't want to teach. Right? So there was, yeah.
What happened to arts, to humanities? This is quite interesting.
I'll tell you, human beings are very good at making each other feel bad.
That's very true. I think we all have PhDs in doing that, because I did know that. I thought that was a humanities thing.
Yeah. So I then I say, okay, but I wanted chemical engineering. Applied chemistry sounds the closest. And applied chemistry, should be the one thing that I take. And when I get there, I'm going to change the program. I'm going to make sure that is the chairperson of that particular department, and I'm going to argue my case, right? I get to NUST. I go and see the chairman of applied chemistry first. Then I tell them my dream. This is what I want to do with my life. This is the industries that I want to work in. This is why I want to work in these industries. I do not think that this is the right place. But I also told them the knowledge that I want. I want to understand this about the world around us. And at that time, the chairperson was Dr. Parek. He passed away. May his soul rest in peace. He made quite a compelling argument that so what you need is not chemical engineering. Maybe you are just hearing the chemical in the engineering aspect and you think that it will have an in-depth understanding of the workings of molecules and such things, but it will not. And this is what the program is really like. It is more about the process control of all those things. And I bought into his argument.
Was
I
he
still went. He was very right.
okay, that's
Of
good.
course. Of course, with years of experience. And then he also had a very good argument. But with applied chemistry, what we then also do is we bring in the engineering aspect that you want. We do have components that cover that will give you an understanding of what is there on that side. And if you ever want to jump ship later on in your postgrad, it will be very easy for you to jump ship with a foundation of this program. You can choose whether you want to continue pursuing the pure science, natural science, or go the engineering route. So I settled, and I've never regretted that. I've never regretted that program. But I went to college with the same attitude that a lot of students get to college with. No one fails. Ku college akufoirwe, and those are told. Right. So my first semester, I was also there. I think at that time it was a very interesting game, mainly for guys. I think called Pro Evolution, the soccer video game. So that was more interesting, and we used to engage more in that, right? So that was more interesting. But then I was told that at the end of the year there is a book prize.
That's fine. Can we do that? You are driven by competition. Can we just say that?
I would admit that. And at that time, but in this case, I was justified. Remember, I'm coming from the wars of 2000 and 2008, and that's really affected my family and the financial background. The financial background. When I went to college, at that point, I was extremely broke, not knowing how the next rent is going to be paid. So for me, the book prize was also a way to resolve some of my problems. It was a way to resolve some of my wars. And I was like, why didn't someone tell me that I can get paid for this in the right way and still, pursue my dream? So I stepped up my game. Right, I went back to that student that I was, the same attitude that I had from the previous years. Now with an added advantage that I actually had instructors, right? So it became almost automatic that every year the price would contribute to my substance, right? It became almost automatic. Right. And I also began to understand the importance after a lot of mentorship with relations that I built during that period. I also began in the importance of laying the foundation right, doing what you have to do in those formative stages correctly, because that's what people would use that to make determination as to whether they want to give you more opportunities or not, right? Something that we are also not that aware of when we are getting into college sometimes, right? And even when it comes to my final project, I had the same attitude. This is a project that you are going to use to, have other researchers give you an opportunity to join their team. At that time, the department had the tendency of doing a particular kind of project, also because they had good reasons. We used to say, department did a water project. And the reason why students and their supervisors tended towards doing that was because the resources were limited, right? And that was simpler to do. But we did something that was more daring, particle science. We took the risk, did what we could. So that was pretty much my undergrad. But then I had a very good relationship with the first chairman that I mentioned and the one that succeeded him. I'm not sure if but Dr. Majudi, he remains a friend, a mentor, and someone that I admire a lot. So he used to teach physical chemistry. So they consider that one of the more difficult aspects of chemistry, right? And how the relationship was built again, it was built on competition, a challenge again. So he came in class, and he had been in the US. So he came into class and then he said, for so many years that I've been teaching this program, we used to call it the fun stuff, and it had two different semesters. I said, no one has been able to score a distinction. If someone can score a distinction, this is how much I'm putting on the line. It was a value. And they keep on giving a dollar value to a man who is broke.
The right kind of motivation.
Well, my fasting is dependent on it. So I went in, put a lot of effort. It worked out. I scored it. He was quite amazed. So from there, I had a lot to learn from him. And he became a mentor and a friend, even after I graduated. So after I graduated, I went into farming because at that time, we had that attitude, there are no jobs. So I didn't even go to Harare from Bulawayo. I got on a bus straight to a relative's farm and started working on potatoes. But I had thrown CVs. I didn't expect much return on them. I'd graduated, obviously, with flying colors, first of my class, that kind of stuff. But I still didn't expect that because of the state of the economy. I didn't expect much from it. So I was like, I was doing this to gain some knowledge. I'm going to use that knowledge to better myself and those around. I went straight to a farm, but I got an opportunity working in a pharmaceutical company. They called me over. They liked it. They liked having a conversation with me, CV. That's how I started to work. First time I worked in a pharmaceutical company in Zimbabwe. Yes, I was in Zimbabwe. So that was a few months just before my graduation, but just a few months after finishing the last semester. Right, that's when I started working for them. Then the chairperson kept on telling me that with the kind of attitude that you have towards school and some of the ideas that we have spoken about, it would be best if you go to grad school. So I started applying. I did get a couple of places in the UK, good schools, but they all would offer me a master's. And I just didn't want to take the master's at that particular time. I felt like if I go for 2 years, whilst I know that I can skip the master's, why do I want to do that? Why can't I just do it all together? Right? He wasn't happy with me turning down those offers. And I said, no, I want a straight to PhD path. So we applied again. We get another offer in, I think, Stellenbosch at that time. And I don't remember. I think we had a conversation about it. I turned it down also. I think this one was to do with a particular kind of research. He was frustrated, but he didn't give up. He didn't give up on trying to get me back into research, and I wanted to also be in research. So in the end, there were opportunities that opened up in West Virginia, and he had colleagues that were there. And he said, okay, we're looking for a student that has this particular kind of traits and can demonstrate it, right? So that's how I ended up applying to West Virginia and found myself working for a researcher in West Virginia and starting my PhD.
There's a lot that you talked about there, Tadini. And I think it's when you talked about the struggles of university, I remember back in my uni days, we had a scoring system. Means 101 and a 001. So 001 means you don't eat in the morning, in the afternoon, you eat manero. So you could have 010 with no breakfast, lunch, then dinner, or you could have 0001. So it's just sort of those, those uni days, the things that we did to survive. It was really interesting hearing you talk about your story, and I think that whole hard work shines through. I have a question for you. You say that you had this offers from the schools in the UK and then from Stellenbosch as well, but then they weren't really what you wanted and you turned them down. And my question for you is, how does a person develop the discipline to say no to an opportunity that looks good, but that doesn't necessarily represent what they really want? Because what I've noticed, at least from the people that I learned with and the people that were in my circles, is most people do education as a way to get out of Zimbabwe. So whatever opportunity that comes, people take it. So my question for you is, where did that come from? What gave you the inner strength to say that? Like, how does a person develop that ability to say, I don't want almost, I want the right thing?
All right. I think when it comes to that, it's also because of the mentors that I had at that time. Like I said, I was already in a pharmaceutical industry, and I had a chief chemist. His name is Chigumbu, and there was a research development leader. I'm forgetting his name, but he was the only Ph.D. in the company at that particular moment in time. So we used to make jokes about it. So when I told them that I on that path, because you need people that will also, write your references and they are part of that group. They made it clear to me that once you're past a certain stage in terms of the academia, you have to understand what you do in front is what forms the rest of your life. It has a greater to form the path that you are going to actually take. So you have to be deliberate. Like, okay, it's no longer about just investing time in something that you might not fully appreciate. So I that was drilled into me. That was part of the reason why I would look at something and say, do I really want to engage in this? Is it going to give me the fulfillment that I want? And is it aligning with how I'm envisioning my future? So that was one part of it. Then the other part is also not up to me. It's simply up to not being hungry. At that point, that's when, I think stable employment, young men, reasonable remuneration. I'm not under the same kind of pressure that I was in the past, you see. And I think that is important, whenever it can be afforded, right? It gives you a bit of clarity, right? It's different from when you are really pressed from all sides and then an avenue opens. If an avenue opens, you're just going to take it. I had no problem with the institution that I was working with. They had already started to mentor me for leadership, also for other reasons. Because like I said, I'm an active citizen. When I got there very young, they gave me these leadership responsibilities. And in realizing that, they'd already started to also mentor me for different positions. So even if I had continued with that company, I still would have enjoyed the fruits of the work that I would have put in, right? So that comfort, or kusava nenzara kwandataura kunokubvumira kuti ukwanise kuramba zvimwe zvinhu. It is a privilege that is not always available. I think if I had gotten these opportunities in an earlier time in my life, I might have taken them, even though they do not necessarily align with what I would have wanted to do in time. Funny common saying that says a man in a desert takes any water that they're offered, or such water as is offered, right? So I wasn't in the desert, so I made the possibility to make that choice at that point of my life.
Yeah. I think that's quite interesting. In my second book, Dear African Child, 100 Love Letters from Me to You, there is a letter that says never bargain from a position of being broke or desperate. People always take advantage of you. So it's like whenever you are bargaining, tanga wa guta, don't negotiate with Nzara, kind of take a grocery in Zara, you would buy all the wrong things in that supermarket. So Tadini, thank you so much for that. So tell us now, we are now closer to who you are now and what's happening now. How was the transition from the US and navigating your studies in the US and eventually building a career in your top secret entrepreneurial activities that are classified?
No, I strictly get it. I asked the partners if I could speak about it. They said no, they're too early, but they're not top secret. And when we get lucky, we'll definitely come back and say, Petronella, can you please host one of us on this? We want to talk about this particular project. It's just that NUST won't see.
That's like about you. Don't involve the business. You're talking about you. It has Okay.
Yeah. So the transition, I have to say that the Zimbabwean community that I found in West Virginia was very helpful. And remember, one of my mentee, one of my advisors, which Dr. Madron, already had some colleagues that they knew here. So getting here, I got here. They already had, an apartment for me. They picked me up from the airport. Without even knowing me, but just because of that other relationship that I had, I stayed. Now they are my friends, right? Very close friends. But at that time, I was a stranger. I stayed in their house, I think, for like 5 days or so, and they made sure that I had everything. And now spoon. So that was easy. Then also going to a school, it was a very large school, right? An R1 institution. But there were also other Zimbabweans that were already doing research. So they also helped me to navigate, how do you choose an advisor? What should you look out for? And I hate to say this, but even telling me who never to have an advisor, I think that's something that we don't tell people in grad school. But grad school is like a marriage, and the advisor is important. The advisor that I end up with was very important. So that part was made easy because there were people who had walked it and who made sure that they would direct my steps. I didn't find that difficult. If I'm being honest, the only thing that I really had to adjust to was the climate and the food, right? So yeah, that's how easy the transition was for me because of that community that already existed. And for that, I will always be grateful to them. And I'm happy to count them amongst my friends, even to this day. Right. Then in terms of the studies themselves, when I left Zimbabwe, I already had an advisor that I was supposed to work with. But within the first semester, I realized that we had not so good a relationship. We were not compatible. So I had spoke to another advisor, but who was outside the field of study that I wanted. Because of that, when I left, I wanted to engage in analytical chemistry, specifically because I was thinking to go back into pharma industry and do a particular enter a particular sect of that industry, right? So I had now to change the advisor, and I talked to several, but I found one in the most probably one of the most unlikely place for someone who's in my field. I went to physical chemistry, and so it's almost like two worlds apart, and that kind of thing. But had an agreement right off at the start. So this is also important. Why it's important to know what it is you're aiming for, what you want to achieve, if you're going to be in grad school, why are you doing it? But I made it clear to the advisor right from that point, and he's right at that point to say, I want to go back into pharma. So I want to make sure that in whatever research I'm going to do for you, these elements have to be dominant. These elements have to be kept alive in that particular research that we're going to do. So I am glad that they had the flexibility to allow me to mold my research, and even transform some of the things, bring in new different techniques, methods, and fields of study that they were not focusing on, as long as it could contribute to their primary objective. They gave me that flexibility, and they were one of the greatest principles that have developed me. And I appreciate the effort that they put into to see me at this point. Right. So that's how I found myself as a physical chemist. So my research in during that period, my 5+ years of Ph.D. is actually in physical chemistry, but in industry, I practice analytical chemistry. And that's because I was able to infuse it in what I was doing at that particular moment in time. Yeah, so that was grad school.
Tadini, you know what? There is a common theme that I'm seeing across your story is the role of mentors, the role of a community, and one of the most common questions that I get from people is, "Can you mentor me?" I don't even know if they know what that means. But so my question to you would be, how does someone find a right mentor for them? People talk about mentorship, don't they? You need a mentor for this, but then what does it mean? And how do you build a relationship with somebody? How do you identify the right mentor? You've already alluded some of the things, like how you weren't compatible with the first advisor you had, and then you had to find that one. But then for someone who is probably starting grad school or who is looking to, find who they are and they're thinking, how do I find a mentor? What advice would you give them? Because it sounds like your story was very much anchored in community and mentors. So what secrets and tips do you have around how to build a community around you and how to identify mentors?
All right. So I tried at least 2 methods in terms of how I find myself with the mentor. The first is, I think, what is very popular with people: find someone who's doing something within your industry or your area of interest, approach them, tell them that you like what they're doing, make sure that you have truly invested in understanding what it is that they're doing. You should demonstrate as much as you can that you really like what they're doing, and then ask them to be your mentor. I've tried that route. It has not been the most successful, but I think it's the easiest. All right. It's the easiest because that would allow you to reach out to many people that you don't even know personally. That So I still think there's something that it's worth, right, but it's not been my most successful when it comes to mentorship. Will I apply it? I will still apply it. However, I'm just reflecting on my own life and how it has been. The other method is, I think, what I would consider is more organic and natural. It's people that you're already working with, but you have already shown interest. They've seen the interest because of how you're already working with them. I keep on mentioning chairperson at the time that I was doing my studies at NUST. Both of them, actually. I didn't write them a letter to say I want you to be my mentor. Right? If anything, the closest thing that I did to ask them to be a mentor was a joke. It's when we were about to go for attachment year. They said, make sure everyone who has a connection in some industry, you tell us the connection that you have. Who do you know? The who do you know couch, right? Mm-hmm. And if you know that person, will write down their name. The university will send the CV on your behalf, and will ask that person, from an official position. So he asked me the same thing because, of course, I was one of his top students, and I said, I don't know anyone. I just know God. And now I know you, so you are going to be my connection. And we laughed about it. But I think now he has realized that he is my connection in a lot of cases.
You were actually serious.
Yeah. I was joking. But yeah, and then so if the people have the right character that want to see people develop, they will also then step in because they know that you have the zeal, you are inexperienced, but you have the drive. They will step in and they will then, guide you accordingly, right? To me, that organic path has been the most successful with a lot of relationships in academia than in other spheres that I participate. That has been way, way easier. And those mentors tend to be also more invested in seeing you grow. It is not superficial. With the other approach, for the times that I've had success, not to say I do not appreciate it, I appreciate what they do. It also has an air of it being superficial. Like, there's also an air of it being superficial. Sometimes they will take up the responsibility, but sometimes it is extremely formal to a point whereby there's a disjoint, right? You're not connected, and you then do not get the full benefit of the mentor-mentee relationship. However, I would say use whatever you can, right? If you have the right attitude, always you're working with people that are senior to you, that are more experienced to you, even if they're at the same level with you, they will guide you along, right? As an example, when I joined the Zimbabwean pharmaceutical Chem, I'll just mention, I was an analyst, right? A chemist, bench chemist to begin with. And there was a gentleman there, had a lot of years, an elderly gentleman, Taiwati Darawan, right? He now is one of the people I also count as friends. On paper, in terms of what we're doing, we were on the same spectrum. But in terms of the experience and knowledge that he held, he was miles away. But just working with people of that, with that experience and respect, mutual respect, it then builds that kind of mentorship relationship without you even being intentionally seeking it at times. You also have to be okay with rejection. If people reject you for whatever reason, it doesn't mean that you should stop pursuing that path, even without a mentor. Maybe you are the one who's supposed to mentor the others. You will be a trailblazer in your own way, and then you will do the mentoring. So that will happen. People will say no, and that's okay. So thank you.
Okay, you know what? That was you took this nicely, because we are winding down, and this is the part of the conversation where I say I'm turning everybody into a motivational speaker for the next 5 minutes. Like, talk about from the journey that you've worked, all of it, the 2008 fiasco, the experiences at university, building a career and all that. Looking at all that, what do you want to tell somebody? What lessons have you learned along that journey that you might thinking, Petronella, for your audience who follows you, the dreamers, the people that are wanting to do things in their lives, this is what I've learned and this is what I would say to them?
Firstly, my experience with life just being life. I would say people should always expect that. The reason why I moved from one neighborhood to another, from the high-end part of Harare to the lower-end part, is because upenyu unotenderera. And 2008 happened to everyone, and it left my family in a very different financial position. And that changes your way of life, that you are used to. So from that, the greatest lesson would be very adaptable and understand that there are other powers that are beyond us. No matter how much we plan, it's not everything that goes to plan. No matter how bad it is today, there's no guarantee that it will remain bad. Tomorrow you wake up and it's all flowers or something that is better. Right? So that is from that part. Enjoy the period, but also understand that that's where you're being formed. And it's the years that you rely on a lot in order to build you up. Those are the years that you point to a lot, whether it is in seeking a job, building partnerships. Those are the years that we will rely on a lot. do not really be worried about fitting into the group at that particular time, because I think that cost me a lot, and it also cost a lot of other people in terms of time, resources, or trying to keep up appearances. Don't be bothered as much about that. Then in my grad school, and now I would say, don't be afraid to fail. Failure is going to happen. I would argue failure is guaranteed. I would argue, yes, I would argue. Yeah, I would argue that failure is guaranteed. So don't be afraid to fail, and don't be afraid to be small. Whoever you admire at some point were considered small or nobody. So don't be afraid to be small. I would rather be afraid of not trying, right? And then in that same period, I take the lesson that if you have tried and it has not amounted into something that will be stuck on a poster saying about, and you do not really, see the fruits of it, you still have to clap hands for yourself for trying. When you do research, you understand that there are a lot of papers that you tear up, a lot of years that produce nothing, but not for the lack of trying. Not for, in our case, not for the lack of not mixing test tubes, not building reaction reactors. You build them a lot and you tear them down. Sometimes it just doesn't work, right? So don't beat yourself too much. Try again. Keep trying. Yeah. Then right now, I think in industry, I've just been in industry for 3 years, and I figured that we're making the answers as we go. You'll be part of the solution. So sometimes we're also afraid of large institutions because we're like, am I going to fit in? Right? Am I going to fit in? When you think of large institutions that do research, popular names, when you see the guys that are there sitting down behind the products that they would have finally brought to the people, you think that everyone, when they step into that door, they already have everything well thought out. It's just a matter of screwing them together and it runs. It's not that. You just need to have the framework, understand that the framework is not solid, it's flexible, and you work it out as you go. I am also I think I consider myself a fairly young a scientist relatively young compared to those that have been in the industry for long. And I'm learning a lot. So the learning doesn't stop. I think that's what I would say, Petronella.
Wow, Tadini. And on that note, I think that's the perfect note for us to end this conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time. You say that you were a dad and then you have a whole job. So you have a whole family and a whole lot of things to do, but you chose to sit down and have a conversation with us today, which I have no doubt will inspire a lot of people. So thank you so much, Tadini, for taking the time and having this conversation with me today.
Oh, thank you very much. I really appreciate you giving me the chance. I have to say I've watched your whole series. What caused me to watch the series is one of a younger guy that I mentor who said, you know what, you're from the hood with us. This is how we feel about what you've done, given that we fully understand your story. I think you should share it. So you're doing marvelous work. Please do continue. There are people there that do not reach out to you, but that are truly inspired, and that know another person's story that they think would also transform other people's lives.
Tadini, thank you so much. And if you know somebody whose story you would want us to platform, please send a message through, and we would be happy to platform them. That is the reason why we created Conversations with the Dreamers. There are so many people who do phenomenal things, who impact people's lives, and sometimes they're just unsung heroes, and we want to give them a chance to share their story. And that is why we created this platform. So Tadini, thank you so much. And everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. You heard it from Tadini. Y'all, it's possible. It really, really is possible. From teaching himself and his colleagues without instructors in high school to just sailing through university and finally getting to a place where he has built his dreams. Those are the stories we platform on this podcast. So don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button so that each time a new episode goes live, you'll be the first one to know. And if you know any dreamer or anybody else story that you think should platform, don't be afraid to just send us a DM. We're on LinkedIn, TikTok, Facebook. So send us a message on any of those platforms and we'll be very happy to platform them. So until next time, thank you so much.